Hello everyone and welcome to game 23 of the 1909 match between Jose Raul Capablanca and Frank James Marshall. I know what you're thinking, how is this game 23? We've only reached game 13. Well, you're not the only one to be surprised by this. You might say, okay, it's game 13, Capablanca is already in the lead 7-1 against one of the top 10 players in the world, Frank James Marshall. And, that's a huge handicap. Chances are Marshall's not coming back into this match. And then, to everyone's surprise, they just started drawing games, and 9 games in succession were drawn. So every game from game 14 to game 22 was drawn. And since, the way this worked is they did have a patron for this match, but they also received money from the audience. So it was also a pay-per-view. And they thought that Capablanca is a stronger player here, no doubt, as he's leading 7-1. That Capablanca chose to draw games on purpose, even from better positions, so he would gain more money. As if the match lasts longer, he gains more money. Therefore, there's no logic for him to end the match prematurely. But then, after carefully studying the games, they decided that it was definitely not Capablanca who was drawing on purpose. If anyone, Frank Marshall was the one who had better options in those 9 games to go, perhaps to pursue something more than a draw, but Capablanca definitely didn't, ruin his positions on purpose to make the match last longer. So they said, okay, it was an interesting theory, but there's no merit to it. So without further ado, let's check out game 23. Also, I don't know if I mentioned this, prior to this match, Capablanca did not study any opening theory, but for this game, his friends, in between games, as this match lasted, I believe, almost 2 months, they showed him a couple of games played in the match, Mises versus Rubinstein, where an interesting line of the Tarrasch defense was used, and Capablanca decided to employ it against Marshall in this game. So, without further ado, Marshall has the white pieces, and he opens with d4. We have d5, c4, and e6. Knight to c3, and now c5. We have the Tarrasch defense on the board. And this is something Capablanca also mentions, that you might have noticed that even, okay, he was much younger then, but in his match against Juan Corso used much sharper openings, and there it really mattered that Capablanca did not know any opening theory, because he could easily lose the game already in the opening. Here, Marshall goes for more of a positional lines, and this really goes into Capablanca's favor, as he really just wants to go straight into the endgame. But okay, c captures on d5, e captures, knight to f3, and knight to c6. Both players just keep on developing. G3, Marshall prepares to fianchetto his light square bishop, bishop to e6, and bishop to g2, bishop to e7. We have castles, knight to f6, and now Capablanca says that probably the best way for white to keep everything, going is d captures on c5. And okay, the engine even agrees with Capablanca, but Marshall goes bishop to g5. He wants to keep on developing without wasting time, but here exactly the opposite happens. Here, Capablanca is able to do this again. Maneuver that trades pieces, which is something Capablanca enjoys doing very much. It's similar like the last card defense in the Queen's Gambit Decline, where you go knight e4, offer a trade of dark square bishops, and you also want to snatch up this knight on c3. And okay, bishop captures, queen captures, and now knight to e5. The problem with d captures on c5 now is that if knight captures, b captures, and queen captures, you will have this weak c3 pawn, and the black will have a very comfortable game. So after queen e7, we have knight e5 by Marshall, and okay, knight captures on d4, we have knight captures on e4, d captures on e4, and now e3, kicking back the knight, knight to f3 check, and now Marshall decides to keep his light square bishop. We have knight captures, e captures on f3, and queen captures on f3, but here Capablanca simply castles, as this pawn cannot be captured. If queen captures on b7, then Capablanca can simply trade, and after rook attacks bishop, you would either go back, or if you try something like centralizing the bishop, black is just going to push it all the way back, and then you're going to capture on b2. You're going to play rook c8, push this past pawn, and black will have a very nice game. So after castling, rook f to c1 was played by Marshall, and now comes rook 8 to b8. Capablanca doesn't want to start his expansion on the queen side too early, because here Marshall could get ideas like queen captures on a8, simply grabbing both rooks for the queen, and as you still have your light square bishop, you will be able to defend very well against black light square bishop, and it's not like you're gonna get mated and two rooks will hold their own against the queen. So Capablanca doesn't allow this. First rook 8 to b8, and now queen to e4. Here Marshall wants to trade his light square bishop, as his light square bishop, although very nicely finqueroed, is a bit worse than Capablanca's very strong bishop on e6. He wants to play bishop to h3, attack the bishop here, and Capablanca cannot move it as his queen on e7 is undefended. So first he moves it, queen to c7. There's no danger of b4, as black can simply push c4. Black even wants to push c4 as soon as possible, so this goes in black's favor. So after queen c7, rook to c3, with ideas of either doubling up on the c file or developing this rook to d1. b5 by Capablanca, now comes a3 and c4. And okay, bishop to f3. Now again, bishop to g4 is an idea. You want to trade this bishop for black's very strong bishop on e6. But again, Capablanca doesn't allow it. Rook fd8. Now if bishop g4, it is playable, but then bishop d5 attacks the bishop and wins this very important diagonal. So we have rook to d1, opposing Capablanca's very strong rook on d8, rook captures, bishop captures, and now rook to d8. Marshall again has to waste a move in bringing the bishop into the game, or he can simply play rook to c1. Rook to c1 would have most likely been the better of the two ideas. But first, okay, he goes for bishop to f3. He wants to try and trade queens with queen to c6. And here, okay, Capablanca says, okay, that's not a problem, just g6, and everything is fine. And it was this position that Emmanuel Lasker saw, and he said that black has now full control of the board, and this is a perfect example of how you can use very, very tiny advantages to you know, try to direct your game to something more than a draw. And here is how Capablanca does it. First, queen c6, offering a trade of queens. And here Capablanca declines, even though after captures and captures attacking the b5 pawn, you can play bishop h3, threaten checkmate, and after white defends rook c1, you're going to go a6, and it's still a very promising position for black, but Capablanca's idea is even better. After queen c6, he goes queen e5, and now after queen to e4, he decides to trade here on e4, without him having to lose a tempo defending the b5 pawn. Queen captures, we have bishop captures, and now rook to d1. This comes with check, and it's very important. Marshall wants to prevent white king from entering the game. So king to g2, and now comes a5. And okay, we have rook to c2. Marshall also has to try and activate somehow. He wants to keep an eye on the b2 pawn, so black rook doesn't attack it. But you're not going to be able to oppose Capablanca's rook on the open d file. So first b4, we have a captures, and now bishop to f3, attacking the rook and the rook to b1. Now this rook is stuck guarding this pawn. Bishop to e2, attacking the c4 pawn twice, but now comes b3. Attacking the rook. And here, the problem with rook to c3 is if you play rook to c3, then you get a rook captures. And after bishop captures here, rook c2 wins the game. You're either going to move the rook, grab a pawn, and then you lose the bishop here, or you're going to try and capture the rook, but then captures on c2, and the pawn queen's on a dark square, the light square. Bishop is helpless against guarding this square. So even the interface shows the bishop moving as a knight, but this is not possible, of course. After b3, we have rook to d2, and now comes rook to c1. Here Capablanca prepares c3, and now there really isn't anything white can do here. Bishop to d1 was played, but now c3. Pawn captures on c3, and now b2. Now you have to give up, you have to capture with the rook and give up the bishop on d1. Rook captures on b2 was played, rook captures on d1, and now comes rook to c2. At least white has 2 pawns for his piece, so he can maybe try pushing the c pawn. Bishop to f5, kicking the rook away from this c file. Rook b2, and now comes rook to c1. Of course, you want to... Marshall tried putting his rook behind a pass pawn. Now Capablanca does put his rook behind a pass pawn, as that's where you usually want to put your rooks, behind pass pawns. We have rook to b3, defending the pawn on c3, and now bishop to e4 check. King h3, and now rook to c2, attacking the f2 pawn. We have f4, defending the pawn. Now the king guards the h2 pawn, and now comes h5. Here Capablanca is threatening bishop to f5 check. For example, if you tried something like rook to a3, just repeating moves and hoping you have some sort of a fortress, it doesn't work because bishop f5 check. King h4, now rook captures on h2, you start losing material, king g5, and then king g7, you're threatening checkmate with f6. White has to prevent this, you have to pin the pawn. Either with rook to a7 or even rook to a6 defending df6 square. But still, after rook to h3, you're going to attack the pawn, and white has no moves. After c4, you're just going to capture this. After king moves, rook h3 check, king moves, and now you're just going to waste the pawn here. After c5, you're just going to give a check. After king captures, now you've gotten rid of your pawn, and after rook h3 check, king g5, rook h5 checkmate. It's just one of the lines that shows how dangerous this position is, so you can't really allow this. So we have g4. You have to sacrifice some material to survive checkmate. H captures on g4, we have king captures on g4, and now rook captures on h2. Rook to b4, attacking Capablanca's bishop, but now f5 with check. King g3, and now rook to e2. There's no way to defend your e3 pawn, so rook to c4 is played. We have rook captures on e3, at least now the c3 pawn is defended. King to h4, and now king g7. Rook to c7 check. We have king to f6, now threatening some very nice checkmating ideas. Rook to d7, but now comes bishop to g2, and now the h3 square is covered. Rook to h3 is the threat of checkmate, and there's very little you can do here. Rook to d6 was played by Marshall. Capablanca played king to g7, and it was in this position that Frank James Marshall resigned the game. After 23 games, a lot of venues, and I believe almost 2 months of gameplay, Capablanca wins the match 8-1. This is unimaginable. No one has defeated a top 10 player with such a score. In those days, it was, like I said, unimaginable. Why did he resign? Well, if you keep on checking, king comes to h6, and now there's really no way to prevent whatever you play. You can, waste some material. There are no chances for you to achieve some sort of a trick by sacrificing your rook or something, as you still have your pawn, and after any move, rook h3 will be checkmate. So yeah, a very tough match for Frank James Marshall, who, like we already mentioned, this was basically after the death of Harry Nelson Pillsbury in 1906. This match was supposed to confirm that Marshall is the strongest player in the United States, and that he will, after this match, receive the title of U.S. champion. But here, after this match was finished, Marshall protested to the official arbiter. The official arbiter was Walter Penn Shipley. He was a lawyer, but also a patron and chief arbiter of this match. This is the gentleman here. Also a very strong player himself. He managed to draw some games against Harry Nelson Pillsbury. Also, he defeated both Wilhelm Steinitz and Emanuel Lasker in simultaneous exhibitions. So definitely not, a beginner or anything. And he decided that, okay, since Capablanca is Cuban, he cannot be a U.S. champion. He does not have U.S. citizenship. But Marshall will not be a U.S. champion either. So what Mr. Walter Penn Shipley decided is that Jackson Whips Showalter, it's this gentleman. He was the person who held the title of U.S. champion before Harry Nelson Pillsbury won it from him, and that the title of U.S. champion now goes back to him, even though he's a retired chess player. But regardless, he never lost a match other than to Harry Nelson Pillsbury, who is now dead, and he never backed down from a challenge. So until he loses a match to someone, or forfeits, or doesn't want to play, then someone else can become U.S. champion. And okay, later in 1909, Frank James Marshall did challenge Mr. Showalter, and he won the match against him, and he became the United States champion. But okay, Capablanca went back to Cuba. It was a 6-week trip, and when he finally went back to Havana, they asked him that they heard that he applied for the U.S. citizenship, and that he was kind of trying to claim the title of US champion, but here, I don't want to say anything wrong, so I do have it here. This is from the American Chess Bulletin, as states as quoted. This is what Capablanca said to them. Since my return to this country a few days ago, I have been asked several times concerning my attitude with respect to the United States Championship and my citizenship. In reply, I wish to make known my attitude in this respect. I am the undisputed champion of Cuba. And last spring I beat Marshall by the score of 8-1. Mr. Marshall has the greatest reputation and the best score in tournaments of any living chess player in the USA, and is therefore considered everywhere as the strongest representative of the United States. By my victory over Marshall, I have taken his position as the strongest representative on this side of the Atlantic. Therefore, I consider myself the champion of America and stand ready to defend my title within a year against any American of the United States of America or anywhere else for a side bet of at least $1,000. In those days, that was a lot of money. United States currency. Under these circumstances, the question whether I am a citizen of the United States of America or not has nothing to do with the matter under consideration. So, by saying this, Capablanca basically said that he is the strongest player of the in the America, and that Marshall can have his U.S. U.S. championship title, but Capablanca is still a much stronger player. And Marshall did not take this, the wrong way or anything, as it was Marshall who will be endorsing Capablanca's, Capablanca, as we already mentioned, that we are going to, next tournament we're going to cover is the 1911 tournament of San Sebastian, Capablanca's first big international tournament, but he did not qualify for the tournament, but it was actually Frank James Marshall who helped him enter this tournament, because you could not play in that tournament without an invitation, and in that tournament only the most elite players were invited, and Frank James Marshall made it happen. And then there were again conspiracy theorists that said that Jose Raul Capablanca and Frank James Marshall had a secret deal where Capablanca said that he will never again try to compete for the title of United States champion, and that Marshall will help him, get invited to this prestigious event. And as Marshall was not interested in playing there himself, it's basically a win-win. But there is no proof to any of this. I just thought you might want to know, what the word around was. That's the game 23 of their match. I do hope you enjoyed it and that you've enjoyed the entire coverage of the match and the entire Capablanca saga so far. Next video we're starting the San Sebastian series. Truly an amazing tournament with a lot of strong players. Feel free to Google it to just get in the spirit of the event for the next video we're going to cover. It's gonna be really wild. I would like to thank Blake Gerg, John Kelly, Oscar Cabrera, Stefan Burke, and Dame Pletvarec for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon with some more interesting content, hopefully. Sorry about no video yesterday. I decided to take a day off. I don't often do this, but I really didn't feel like making one yesterday, so I thought better take a day off. Thank you all, and I will see you soon.